We're in week 8 and we're talking playoffs here pretty soon for fantasy football. So we have our panic meter and we are getting closer to that trade deadline, if not already past it. So some of this list is we're going to be making add drop decisions on some of these assets. But first, here's some guys that you probably are stuck with and you already need to make another plan going forward. Saquon Barkley, my panic meter, 8 out of 10. We are asking every bit out of this offense just to get AJ Brown going, just to get Devontae Smith going, and we still have Saquon, who hasn't really topped that 20-point game like he had in week 1. I just don't know how much juice is left in this orange after we've just now got something out of the passing game, and we do know that Jalen Hurts is someone who can snipe a lot of those rushing touchdowns that Saquon could get. And again, getting the passing volume is going to be difficult when we have Dallas Goedert, who lives in the same area of the field. And like I just previously said, there's only so much to go around with two dynamic wide receivers like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Like, you need to keep happy. I just don't know what you're going to do with them going forward. If you do have a trade deadline that is after this week, or maybe you've already hit it, I'm not saying you can drop them, but if you can trade them, and especially you dynasty players out there, if you can do a player for player deal, I would. I just don't know if you can trade something for, let's say, a dynasty draft pick for rookies. And again, if you're in redraft, you have to do player for player deal, and you're probably going after another position like wide receiver or tight end, maybe even quarterback, because tearing down from a running back, I'm not really sure who has the upside that Saquon has, and a lot of people aren't really going to be trading if they have a much better floor. Next, it's wide receiver Xavier Worthy from the Chiefs. Panic meter's at 10 out of 10. I don't know if he's quite droppable, but he could be, just depending on how shallow your league is. But I've said this even in the offseason, that I just don't think Xavier Worthy is the type of player that a lot of people expect him to be, especially with Rashee Rice. He wasn't getting a lot of those boom games before Rashee Rice was in the lineup. Now he's especially not getting them. I am super concerned about the future as far as a fantasy asset. Not for his future in the Kansas City Chiefs offense, because I think this is a classic case that he's a much better NFL player and he offers a lot more for the Kansas City Chiefs in that facet than he can offer us as a fantasy asset. And unfortunately, he has that damning label of better in best ball in my book. So again, if you're in a 10-man league, he might be droppable. And if you are stacked at wide receiver and you have some options, and maybe you're trying to go and get a Rondé Gadsden because you're weak at tight end, I might consider getting a Rondé Gadsden over Xavier Worthy at this point. There will be the boom games, but I think you putting him in your lineup, especially if you're teetering on that playoff spot, is just something that I might not want. And he's a classic player that I think could be a landmine for someone else who wants to pick up some upside, and then he lays a lot of duds in their lineup instead. And I got 4 more guys for you, but before we move any further, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so we can continue to get content like this to you all the way through the playoffs and even after, if you're into Dynasty. And more importantly, if you want all that cool data and tools that it's behind the paywall, make sure you go over to rotowire.com, use the code on the screen, YouTube15 at checkout, and that gives you 50% off all of our tools, subscriptions, and even some fancy articles that are behind that paywall, like I just said. And we'll get right back into it. Another quarterback, CJ Stroud. He really is in droppable territory in 1 QB leagues, I think, at this point. He doesn't have the rushing upside that a lot of these other guys do. Now he can, but I don't think that's something you can consistently count on. And if anything, I think how poor the offensive line is, it's just going to counteract a lot of that, because even when he is running, he doesn't quite have the speed of even someone like Jackson Dart or Justin Herbert to really make a difference. And that's what it really comes down to. I think this entire offensive line is holding back the offense. We can love the individual pieces like CJ Stroud, like Woody Marks, even all the wide receivers that they spent this offseason acquiring, but it means nothing if you can't protect your quarterback and if you can't block for your running game. And this seems to be an offense that really needs a running game. My panic meter, 9 out of 10. Next one, this is some preemptive panic, and not necessarily maybe a move that you want to make right away, but if you've got the beef on your team, maybe you can play a little bit of 4D chess and gamble. It's Jordan Mason. My panic meter is at a 6 out of 10. I just don't understand what's going on with the Vikings. I do like what we've gotten out of this passing game, even with Carson Wentz, but I just don't know what the overall upside is for him to have the touchdown equity. And we just got the news that Aaron Jones is designated to come back from IR. I don't know what that means as far as snap share, and it might not mean that he comes back immediately. It just means that he can come in and contribute and take away some of these snaps on offense. So this is the time where maybe you can drop him and he's a landmine on someone else's roster and you get a little bit of sabotage. And again, that's why I said it's a little bit of preemptive 4D chess, because I do think he can be useful. I just don't know how much touchdown equity is in this offense. And if you were a 0 RB guy, then he's someone that you might need. But if you got him as your 3rd or 4th running back, maybe you picked up someone else off the waiver wire that's been a little bit more productive. I think Jordan Mason might be better off on someone else's roster because they expect some upside that might not longer be there with Aaron Jones coming back in the fold. And again, I don't know when JJ McCarthy comes back, and if he does, is this offense even as effective as what we've gotten with Carson Wentz, which hasn't been bad from a fantasy standpoint for Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Hawkinson still seems to be a disappointment, but as far as Jordan Mason goes, might be the time to move him. Next on the list, Jerry Jeudy. I've almost forgotten about him. So my panic meter, 11 out of 10, and he is 100% droppable at this point. I've forgotten about him because I don't think he's hit double digits. And this isn't because there's a lack of targets to be had in this offense. This offense has moved through the tight ends and everything else has been secondary. And then Jerry Jeudy's never been an elite target earner on top of that. And then he still suffers from drops. I don't know what he offers us team as far as a wide receiver. He just doesn't seem like a difference maker. And then in fantasy, he's pretty much useless at this point. If you drafted him and if you faded wide receiver and got him as your wide receiver 2 or 3, hoping that he would be a contributor, you are really panicked at this point because I don't think he's had any trade value. And now you're probably putting him on the waiver wire. Now for our next one, it's another wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. This is another one where I love the upside, but he's almost the different side of the same coin as Xavier Worthy, where Worthy is this deep threat. It seems that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to continue to be the sacrificial X. Some people think that it's Kyler Murray. I don't think Kyler Murray is as egregious as a quarterback as some people say is. Now, I'm not saying he has this high ceiling that's going to be elevating a team and we're going to be hearing MVP chants anytime soon. But I do think he's competent. And if anything, I think he could be a Jared Goff with wheels, which brings me to my point that I think the biggest issue is the play calling. I just don't like this Drew Petzing offense. I don't like the usage that we get from Marvin Harrison Jr. And obviously the production isn't ideal from anyone either. And they're not winning games, and it seems to be disastrous on all fronts on anything but defense. And keep in mind, Jonathan Gannon is a defensive-minded head coach. So I definitely think that Petzing is a problem, and he could be a problem that they could fix in the offseason. As for right now, if you can move Marvin Harrison Jr., do it. I still think he is a buy if you're a dynasty player out there. I don't know what you're doing in redraft, because where you took him, you had him as your wide receiver 2 or 3. So unless you were lucky enough to get maybe Agbuka at a wide receiver 3 cost, you're probably not dropping him at this point. So basically this panic is to tell you that you should do what you can to try to replace that talent from the waiver wire or any way that you can see fit, because he is purely a dynasty buy, and if anything in redraft, he's a flex play at best. As always, if you like content like this, hit the like and subscribe. And as I mentioned before, if you want a discount on all the fun stuff, go to rotowire.com and use the code YouTube15 at checkout. My name's Jagger May. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.